There is a special kind of silence that falls on the world when a child is alone. It's not a peaceful quiet, but a watchful one. A silence that feels like it's holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. This is the story of Leo Vance, a boy who learned that the most dangerous path isn't through a dark forest or a haunted graveyard. It's the one you walk every single day. Hello, and welcome to Deadform Stories, a place where shadows hold secrets, and the ordinary becomes a gateway to the unimaginable. If you find comfort in the familiar, in the well-lit paths of your life, then what we share here may unsettle you. But if you dare to peer into the abyss, to walk with us along the edges of terror, then we invite you to like this video and subscribe. Join our community of brave souls if you have the courage, because the story you are about to hear, it asks a simple, terrifying question. What if the thing following you home wasn't trying to hurt you? It was trying to warn you about something already waiting there. For 11-year-old Leo Vance, the walk home from Oak Ridge Elementary was a daily adventure. It was a mile and a half of freedom, a precious sliver of independence between the final school bell and the warmth of his kitchen, where his mother would always have a snack waiting. The route was a familiar tapestry of his small-town life, down the cracked concrete steps of the school, or right onto Maple Drive with its canopy of ancient, gnarled trees, a left onto the quieter, narrower Sycamore Lane, and finally, the home stretch down his own street, Elm Street. He knew every crack in the sidewalk, every house with a dog that would bark, every lawn ornament that seemed, in the right light, to watch him pass. It was on a Thursday in late October when the ordinary began to curdle. The air had turned crisp, carrying the smoky scent of burning leaves. The sun, already low in the sky by 3:30, cast long, distorted shadows that stretched across the pavement like grasping fingers. Leo, his backpack slung over one shoulder, was kicking a red oak leaf ahead of him, lost in thought about a video game. He was on Sycamore Lane, the part where the houses grew sparse, separated by thickets of woods on either side. It was here he first heard it, a rustle in the dry leaves just off the path to his right. He paused, his leaf-kicking game forgotten. Probably a squirrel, he told himself, but the sound didn't have the frantic, skittering quality of a small animal. It was slower, deliberate, a crunch, then a pause, then another crunch, keeping perfect pace with his own footsteps. He stopped completely. The crunching stopped a half-second later. The woods had gone quiet. Even the ever-present chirping of birds had ceased. Leo peered into the thicket, the bare branches of the undergrowth weaving a tangled web against the gray sky. He saw nothing but shadows within shadows. Shaking his head, feeling a little silly, he started walking again, a little faster this time, and immediately, the sound from the woods resumed, matching his new, quicker pace. A cold knot tightened in his stomach. This was no squirrel. He dared not look back into the woods. Instead, he focused on the sidewalk ahead, his heart beginning to drum a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The rational part of his brain, the part that loved science class, tried to offer explanations. A deer, maybe a stray dog, but deer didn't follow you with such precise timing, and dogs would have shown themselves by now. This was something that wanted to remain hidden, yet wanted him to know it was there. It was playing a game, and Leo didn't know the rules. He broke into a jog. The rustling in the woods became a crashing, no longer bothering with stealth. It was keeping up effortlessly. He could hear the snap of twigs, the violent shuddering of branches. Fear, cold and sharp, shot through him. He sprinted, his backpack bouncing painfully against his spine, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He didn't stop until he burst out onto the open, sunlit safety of Elm Street. He risked a glance back at the tree line. The woods were still and silent once more. The thing, whatever it was, had not followed him into the light. He told his mother he'd just been running for fun. He didn't know how to explain the feeling, the primal certainty that he had been hunted. The next day, he walked home with a group of friends, laughing too loudly, trying to drown out the memory. But on Monday, he was alone again, and as he turned onto Sycamore Lane, the fear returned, a cold stone in his gut. He held his breath, listening. Nothing but the wind. He took 10 tentative steps. Silence. Maybe it had just been his imagination, fueled by the spooky season. Then he saw it. Tied to the low-hanging branch of a dogwood tree at the exact spot the rustling had begun, was a piece of white fabric. It fluttered in the breeze like a tiny flag of surrender. As he got closer, he saw it was a rag, stained and dirty, but clearly torn from something larger. It was tied with a clumsy, childlike knot, and pinned to the center of the rag was a single, dead oak leaf, its edges brown and brittle. It was a message, he was sure of it. But what did it mean? A warning? A marker? His hand trembled as he reached out, but he couldn't bring himself to touch it. He left it hanging there, a cryptic monument to his growing dread. The following day, the game escalated. He was halfway down Sycamore Lane when a voice whispered from the woods. It was so faint he almost missed it, woven into the sound of the wind. Leo. It was a dry, rasping sound, like leaves skittering across pavement. He froze, his blood turning to ice. It knew his name. The rational explanations were crumbling away, leaving only raw, undiluted terror. He stood rooted to the spot, his eyes scanning the impenetrable wall of trees. Leo. The voice came again, slightly louder this time. It was impossible to tell if it was male or female, young or old. It was just a voice, a hollow imitation of one. Don't go home the usual way. The words didn't make sense. Don't go home? Where else was he supposed to go? This was his path. This was his life. The voice offered no explanation. There was only the sound of receding footsteps through the dry leaves, growing fainter and fainter until silence reclaimed the woods. Leo ran all the way home, his mind racing faster than his feet. He didn't take his usual way. He took a long, looping detour through several back streets, his heart hammering the whole time. When he finally stumbled through his front door, pale and shaking, his mother frowned. "You're late, sweetie, and you look like you've seen a ghost." He just shook his head and went straight to his room, collapsing onto his bed. The thing in the woods knew his name. It knew his route, and it was trying to tell him something. The whispers became a daily occurrence. They never threatened him. They never asked for anything. They only offered cryptic, unsettling advice. "Check the locks on your window tonight, Leo. The man in the blue car has been watching your house. Your brother isn't who you think he is." Leo had no brother. The messages were a confusing mix of the vaguely plausible and the utterly insane. They were seeds of paranoia, planted deep in his mind, and they were beginning to sprout. He started seeing things, a flicker of movement in the periphery of his vision, always just disappearing around a corner. A pale face in the window of a supposedly empty house on Sycamore Lane. The world he had known his whole life was becoming a funhouse mirror reflection, familiar yet deeply wrong. He became withdrawn at home, jumping at the slightest sound. His parents put it down to stress at school. They didn't see the terror in his eyes when he looked out the window at the gathering dusk. A week after the whispers began, he found a drawing tucked into the seam of his backpack, a place he was sure it hadn't been that morning. It was on a crumpled piece of notebook paper, drawn in shaky, hurried pencil strokes. It depicted a crude stick figure boy walking along a wavy line that was clearly a path. Behind him, emerging from a scribble of trees, was another figure. This one was tall, unnaturally thin, with long, spindly arms and no face, just a blank oval. But it was what was in front of the stick figure boy that made Leo's breath catch in his throat. It was a house, his house, and in an upstairs window, his window, was another faceless figure, looking out. The message was clear. The danger wasn't just behind him in the woods. It was ahead of him. It was at home. That night, Leo pushed his dresser in front of his bedroom door. He didn't sleep. The climax arrived on a cold, foggy afternoon. The mist had rolled in early, shrouding the world in a ghostly gray blanket. Sounds were muffled. Visibility dropped to a few dozen feet. It was the perfect stage for a nightmare. As Leo walked, the fog seemed to swallow the world behind him. The houses on Sycamore Lane were just vague, looming shapes. He felt more alone than he ever had in his life. The voice didn't whisper today. It spoke clearly, from a fixed point just inside the tree line. "Leo, stop." He stopped. His legs felt like lead. "You need to listen to me now," the voice said. It still had that rasping, unnatural quality, but there was an urgency to it he hadn't heard before. "You can't go home. Not today. He's there." "Who's there?" Leo managed to croak, his voice small and terrified in the vast, foggy silence. "The other one," the voice replied. "The one who wears my face." Leo's mind reeled. None of this made any sense. "Who are you?" There was a long pause. He could hear what sounded like ragged breathing from the woods. Then, a figure emerged from the mist-shrouded trees. It was tall and thin, just like in the drawing. It was wrapped in a tattered, dark coat that hung off its frame. But as it stepped closer, the fog parting around it, Leo saw its face, and he screamed. It was his own face, but it was a nightmare version. The skin was pale and waxy, like a corpse. The eyes were sunken and dark, but they held a terrifying, ancient knowledge. The mouth was set in a grim, sorrowful line. It was him, aged by decades of suffering. It was a Leo from a terrible future, or from a reality that had gone horribly wrong. "I am you," the thing said, its voice cracking with an emotion that sounded like pity. "Or what's left of you. I've been trying to stop this. I've been trying to warn you. I've walked this path 1,000 times. I've failed 1,000 times. But today the door is open wider. Today, I might be able to change it." Leo was beyond terror. He was in a state of pure, uncomprehending shock. He was looking at a ghost of himself, a doppelganger from the woods. "Change what?" Leo whispered, tears streaming down his face. "He's in our house," the other Leo said, pointing a skeletal finger down Elm Street into the fog. "The thing that pretended to be our father last year. The thing that replaced him after the accident." A memory, sharp and painful, flashed in Leo's mind. The car accident, the one his father hadn't survived. The funeral, the months of grief. But that wasn't right. His father had survived. He'd been in the hospital for a while, but he'd come home. He was quieter, more reserved, but he was home, wasn't he? "He didn't survive, Leo," the other Leo said, as if reading his thoughts. Its sunken eyes were full of a bottomless grief. "The thing that came back, it's not Dad. It's a parasite. It feeds on grief. It wears the skin of the lost, and once it's inside, it starts to change the world around it. It makes you forget. It makes you accept the impossible. It's why Mom doesn't remember the scar on his left hand anymore. It's why you can't quite recall the sound of his real laugh." The world tilted. Pieces of the last year clicked into a horrifying new picture. The small inconsistencies he dismissed. The strange feeling he got sometimes when his father looked at him. A look that held no warmth, only a cold, curious assessment. The way the house always felt a few degrees colder now. It was all true. The whispers, the warnings, they weren't from a monster. They were from a savior who was a shattered reflection of himself. "What do we do?" Leo asked, his voice trembling. "We don't go home," the other Leo said. "Not yet. We have to break its hold. It's weakest when it's challenged by the truth. We have to go to the place where the veil is thinnest, the place where it crossed over, where the site of the accident." And so, Leo Vance, accompanied by his own tormented future self, turned away from the warmth and safety of home and walked deeper into the fog, toward the place where his world had first been fractured. They walked in silence, the only sounds the crunch of their footsteps on the gravel shoulder of the old county road. The other Leo moved with a weary familiarity, as if he had walked this road in countless nightmares. They reached the spot, a bent guardrail, still not fully repaired, a scar on the landscape, a makeshift cross and withered flowers marked where his father's car had left the road and plunged into the ravine below. The fog was thick here, coiling around the trees like serpents. "This is where it happened," the other Leo said, his voice barely a whisper. "This is where it took him, and this is where it pretended to be him, crawling out of the wreckage." He turned to Leo, his ghastly face grim. "You have to say it. You have to say the truth out loud. You have to reject its lie." Leo looked at the ravine, the memories flooding back, now sharp and clear and unedited by the thing living in his house. The hospital call, the funeral, the empty chair at the dinner table, the grief that had been so overwhelming, so unbearable, that when a familiar shape had appeared at the door weeks later, claiming amnesia, a miracle, they had all clung to it. They had wanted the lie so badly they had made it real. "My father is dead," Leo said, the words feeling like shards of glass in his throat. The fog around them seemed to pulse. "Again," urged the other Leo, louder. "My father is dead." Leo screamed into the mist, the words tearing from him, raw and painful and true. A wind kicked up, swirling the fog into frantic vortices. The trees groaned, and from the direction of his house, miles away but carried on the unnatural wind, came a sound of pure, undiluted rage. It was a shriek that was not human, a sound of tearing fabric and breaking bones. It was the sound of a lie being unmade. The other Leo began to fade, becoming translucent. A look of profound peace settled on his nightmarish features. "It's working," he breathed. "The connection is breaking. It can't stay now that you know. You've broken the cycle." He looked at Leo, and for a fleeting second, he looked like just a tired, sad boy. "Remember this. Remember the truth. And whatever you see when you go back, don't be afraid. It's just the world, healing." And with those words, he dissolved into the fog, gone as if he had never been there. Leo stood alone by the broken guardrail, shivering, the echoes of the shriek still ringing in his ears. The wind died down. The fog began to slowly lift. He didn't know what he would find when he walked home. He didn't know if his mother would remember the truth, or if she was still trapped in a comforting lie. He only knew that the thing in the woods, his own terrible future, had sacrificed itself to set him free. He had faced the unknown, and he had chosen the painful truth over a beautiful lie. He turned and began the long walk home. The path was the same, the streets were the same, but the world was different now. It was real, and as he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that the silence that surrounded him was no longer watchful or threatening. It was simply silence, the quiet after the storm. But in the back of his mind, a final, terrifying question lingered, a whisper from a ghost that was once himself. If that thing was no longer in his house, where had it gone? And sometimes, late at night, when the wind rattles the window pane just so, Leo Vance still wonders if he truly broke the cycle, or if he only managed to delay the inevitable for himself and for the next child who has to walk alone.